Hi, everybody. My name is Heather. I'm a self-care and empowerment coach who works with women around the world using mindful movement, empowered dialogue, and conscious breath. Today was a really special day for me. I had the pleasure and the honor of interviewing my dear teacher and friend, Bex Tyrer. She is a Yogini who has taught around the world, who is a yoga activist, and who is passionate about helping women reconnect with themselves. Our conversation really focused on self-care and the importance of self-care today. She and I shared a little bit about our personal journeys, and I hope that you will stay tuned for the entire conversation because it's such a vital and important discussion to be had, especially today. I also want you to stay tuned to the end because we talk about some immersions that Bex is going to be offering in the near future. And there's going to be an invitation to you to join her, either in Bali or in the United Kingdom, for these experiences. And as somebody who has studied with Bex in the past, who has sat in conversation with her, I can guarantee you that this is an opportunity that you don't want to miss. So enjoy the conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, get to know you and your journey with self-care. And you can do that by sharing your reflections in the comments below. So with that, here is my conversation with the amazing, beautiful, and wise Bex Tyrer. Bex, I'm so excited to see you. Thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation with me. Everyone, let me introduce Bex to you. Bex Tyrer is a yogini. She has been such a light and an inspiration to me in my own journey and my own path with yoga and movement and activism and how we show up not only for others but also for ourselves. Bex is originally from Scotland, but she has worked and shared her passion and love of movement around the world, including in Kolkata, in Palestine, and in Bali. She's currently in the United Kingdom, but she'll be heading back to Bali shortly to do some incredible work that I know you all will want to be a part of. And we're going to talk more about that toward the end of today's conversation. So stay tuned because what Bex offers, you don't want to miss. And I know that you will want to be a part of the work that she is bringing forth into this world. And today's conversation is really a dialogue between Bex and I around what it means to inhabit the space of self-care. We're going to be talking about Bex's journey with self-care and self-care through movement and other modalities and what that's looked like, including how important the feminine is to this idea of self-care and why we are at a point in our evolution as women, as men, as people existing in this world, why this discussion of the feminine is so important to the way that all of us are showing up today. So Bex, thank you again for taking time today. And if there's anything else that you want to say in terms of introduction, I'd love it.
Oh, thank you so much, Heather, and thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to share. I'd like to say that I began practicing yoga in 2001, and essentially I began as a form of self-care. I didn't really realize that at the moment. I think most of us are like that when we first step onto a yoga mat, and yet the way it transpired was that yoga became my focus. So I was studying for a master's degree at the time at a very prestigious university here in England. And yeah, I was holding a lot of self-imposed pressure. And I found yoga my personal retreat space. And yet for years, I didn't really tap into the real potential that it had for me. It was almost like I was also allowing myself to abuse it and not really sort of harness the real wisdom that it had to guide me. And yet often as we are, we're drawn to certain modalities, and it takes us a while to kind of figure out why. And so I put my, degree and my academic education to one side, and several years later became a yoga teacher. And still there was this gap between what was really going on the inside and what I was teaching. And that gap showed up in certain really unhealthy but socially acceptable addictions, primarily working too much. Secondly, like not really looking after myself, putting other people first, and ultimately a lot of stress, which is really ironic considering that I lived, in Bali, had a fantastic job, lived in a wonderful place. And yet the stress I felt on the inside was at times unbearable. It's just like this feeling that I had to do more, even, as a yoga teacher, like I had to teach more. I had to, I really wanted to be useful in this world and with this one like precious human life that I have. And one thing led to another, and recently in October, I found myself in a really crazy situation, which was I was accidentally set on fire, and I sustained burns over 30% of my body, and that's second and third degree burns. So I was 15 days in intensive care, and my whole world fell apart, and I had some serious time to contemplate what was important to me. And the process since 3rd of October till now has been one that continues to unfold. So I'm wary that I'm not through it yet. And yet I'm also aware that I've been given many gifts and many insights, and perhaps some of those are useful to share.
I love what you said. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I love what you said about the gap. And I think that, so many of us, in fact, maybe all of us show up with these gaps in understanding. And, I think we practice and we find these modalities to almost close the gap in all of us, whether it's students who are coming to our classes, people coming to our trainings, whether it's ourself, these gaps show up, and then it's okay. How do we navigate that gap? And I'm wondering if in some ways, these traumas that we experienced, the 3rd of October, I experienced some trauma 2 years ago. I'm wondering if these traumas that we experience in our lives almost serve to show us another gap that needs an exploration in terms of how we close it again. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you at all, or if you see your self-care work from that place. And actually, maybe that's another question, is how do you feel your work with self-care has been transformed? I mean, 2001, but
I firstly want to say that what I've just been through, and what all of us at some point will face just by virtue of being human,
right,
which are these very traumatic situations that can show up in such a myriad of forms. It's firstly, yes, I totally agree with you. They can be such a portal for transformation, and yet they're also really tough.
Yeah.
And there's times, being in the middle of it, that it just feels that you know, why? Like, what is the point of, I felt like I knew suffering, I felt like I knew pain, you know, why do I have to have more of an intensive in this? And I don't really feel like I've got the answer to that. I often think of that beautiful example of the man walking along and seeing a cocoon of a butterfly on a branch, right? And the butterfly is like trying to get out. So the man wants to help, and so he gets some scissors and he cuts the cocoon open. And then the butterfly just you know, it can't fly because it hasn't had that ability to push through its own cocoon.
Right.
And so it dies. And I love that because it does help me realize that potentially, you know, these moments of really intense intensity can build resilience, or can reflect the resilience and the strength that we already have. And at the same time, they can also push us over the edge. So it's a very, very fine line. You know, of course, the optimist in me is always like, yes, we can transform, and yes, there's something here that can be turned into real alchemy. Right now, what comes to mind is that I want to be able to look at other women directly in the eyes and say it's possible to overcome and move through whatever it is you're going through that feels impossible, you know, whether that's deep grief or illness or injury. And so that, you know, that's kind of, that's what's giving me the motivation to kind of work in with the darkness that has come up and continues to come up through this process of recovery. And rather than attempt to suppress it and put on another mask and say, yes, everything is fine. Right. And again, you know, another gap is there between what's the reality and what's really going on. I often think of the swan just floating along the surface of the lake, and yet it's paddling like so hard underneath, right? Yeah. So in terms of how this has all changed my self-care, I mean, it's radical, like really radical. Yeah. I think for many of us, as women in particular, and, you know, for sure men are facing, you know, equally powerful challenges from the roles, social roles that they have to also try and fill. I think for many of us as women, we've been so conditioned to put others first, and that any self-care seems like a luxury or something that we only turn to at times of real tragedy, you know? So when we've been really flawed, it's like, okay, now I'll take care. Yeah. But what if we had to, you know, rather than sort of the critical moments of realization of, oh, what can I do to, you know, recover from this? Like daily acts of self-care that can help us, or help us to prevent kind of the real tumbling into the black hole. Right. So that's changed my whole perspective now on self-care, because I think I've had many situations in my life, again, nothing, you know, super tragic, just normal life stuff that I haven't dealt with well. And now it's all come up to the surface, right? And so it's giving ourselves permission to take rest regularly, and really self-inquiry, like really having a good look in, primarily, especially coming from, you know, quite a rigid culture where we're not so good at perhaps being as emotive as other parts of the world, expressing certain emotions, giving ourselves permission to take rest and not feel guilty about it. Many of us are highly functional and very motivated, overachievers. Even if we're self-employed, we want to, you know, do as much as we can. And as I mentioned, this whole situation has shown me what's really important, and that is to be with what's present, to be present with people I love, to care about them, to give myself permission to feel. And and also to try and get rid of this shame and guilt that it's okay for me to take, you know, months of rest. That's okay, and that's necessary.
Oh, yes. Can we dig into that a little bit more? Can we excavate that a bit? Because I think the shame and guilt around self-care and self-inquiry, I think, is much deeper of a barrier than we are talking about. You know, I think that there's a lot of surface level talk about access to self-care, like, oh, you know, it costs money, or I need to take time, or, you know, I need to remove myself from my everyday reality in order to access self-care. You know, those to me feel like the general conversation around why people aren't engaging in self-care. But the shame and guilt around self-care is a big one. You know, I think about times where I've accessed therapy, or me as a yoga teacher taking time to immerse myself as a student, you know, in a class or at a training, or, you know, taking a moment to, as self-employed, taking a moment to read something for fun instead of reading something for work, and, you know, so I can apply it in some way, shape, or form. And when I'm doing those things, if I'm in a class, if I'm reading something for fun, if I'm, you know, taking time just to take care of myself, I almost feel like in some ways it has to be in secret. Like, heaven forbid anyone find out that I'm doing these things that I can't directly apply in some way to me and how I'm showing up for others, you know? And how do we start breaking down that wall of shame and guilt? Because that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, for me, like, to answer this question, it's to really look at our kind of definition of self-care, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think for many people that shows up as going to the spa, or having a day off, or getting a massage, you know, taking a nice holiday, and so on. And yet actually self-care can be far more simple. It can be really about having time just to feel, right? Like, what is my body telling me? What is it that I need? Mm. How can I perhaps just do 1% less? Yeah. Not that I have to put everything on hold, just do 1% less. Maybe it is asking for space. And I know for you as a mother, right, it's not always easy, right? But I think all of us, you know, even our intimate relationships or in our work relationships, we feel that, like, I have to be available all of the time. And yet just having that little bit of space and that quiet is a form of self-care.
Uh-huh.
That other element of self-care for me, it's giving myself love. I think there's a lot of inner talk that many of us would be terrified of anyone else hearing, like what we said to ourselves, right? That inner critic that can be far more harsh than our worst enemy. And we give that inner critic so much space. And so it's making friends with that critic, realizing why is it there? What is it, you know, what wisdom has it got to teach me? And also, when is it time to say enough? Mm-hmm. And also, how can I mediate that? Like, what is it that I'm doing great? What is it that I'm doing really well? You know, and that, how can we, you know, I often think, well, we're so busy taking care of others or wanting to support others. But if we're not able to really wake up in the morning and say, wow, Bex, you're doing great today, you know, rather than, oh, I haven't done this and I haven't done that and I haven't shown up in this way, you know, so that is a really powerful and fundamental component of self-care that doesn't cost anything, you know? Again, so many of us haven't been taught how to do that, or, you know, by our mothers or our grandmothers. They were on the same sort of ancestral trail of just giving and giving and giving and giving. So we're probably quite a fortunate time now, or a curious time, that we have this extra time to do yoga, to do these practices that give us an opportunity to look in. Yeah. And yet it's bringing up, you know, like years or generations of conditioning that we need to be, I should say, another way. We need to be productive all of the time, you know. So having a good look at that, I think it's really, really important. The ability to do nothing. Can I just do nothing? In my own experience lately, because the post-traumatic stress has been so strong, I haven't been able to do anything for 3.5 months. Right? I wasn't able to get past one paragraph of reading a book. I would try and read the Bhagavad Gita and I'd go through the first paragraph again and again. Okay. And yet I could go for a walk in nature every day. Right. And I could put on my favorite TV show, Friends. Yeah, and watch it again and just laugh and just be okay with that, because that was all my capacity was. Right? So I think as well, it's realizing that until I'm able to be full, and I don't mean this idea of completely healed or perfect that, you know, the wellness industry has us chasing the carrot on the stick, you know, that one day I'm going to be like floating around and nothing's going to get to me. But I mean, just, can I give myself enough that I'm able to really listen in? What do I need? Yeah. And if I'm not able to listen to that, then how can I listen to you and reflect to you what, you know, what could support you? Right. Or on a bigger level, my community, or on an even bigger level, Mother Earth. You know, right. This body is talking to me every day. If I can't listen to this, how can I listen to, you know, the body of the earth? It's right. The same thing. Right.
And there are two things you brought up. One is, you know, self-care is going to look different to each person, day to day, moment to moment. One day it's friends, another day it might be that conversation with a friend, right? And I think, you know, breaking out of this idea that self-care has to look a certain way for it to be called self-care. And I think that that's incredibly empowering for us as individuals to say, this is my form of self-care. It doesn't matter if you view it that way or not. This is what I need, because as you said, I'm listening to myself. And then you brought up this really powerful idea of space. You know, space to listen to the inner voice, both the one that's telling you what you're doing well, but also the one that's speaking the negative self-talk, and then the space for self-care. And I think when we start to dismantle the social construct of what self-care is supposed to be, we can realize that space can happen in a minute and not necessarily 10 days somewhere else. And I'm wondering how we start to redefine this concept of space. Because a minute could actually be somebody's hour.
Yeah, completely. And, you know, this is what we have with the whole, you know, wellness industry again. It's this idea that, oh, to do a proper yoga study, I have to go away for a month, right? Rather than realizing that 5 minutes in the morning of your yoga practice is your study. Yes. And you do that every day, and to integrate it in your life as opposed to make it something separate, which, you know, then it becomes harder and harder to attain. So I feel personally ritual has been really important, you know, having like a daily routine, that no matter how busy I am, I have to prioritize certain things for my own well-being. Right. And if I do them enough, I realized that I function way better with them than without them. And then that's an antidote to the guilt we were speaking about before. So during this time, like I've had to get on my mat, once or ideally twice a day in order to be able to move the tension that's in my body.
Right.
Now I've had no choice about that. If I hadn't have done that, I would have needed more surgery, right? So it was a little bit of a different situation than day to day, but I would say the ethos of it is the same, is that if I can get up and do my, like I said, 5 minutes of yoga in the morning, doesn't need to be 90 minutes. A lot of people don't have 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Just know that just like I would brush my teeth or have a shower, I can do my 5 minutes of yoga. Right. And I do that every day. And that is deeply empowering. It's like, wow, I've taken a step towards my own well-being. Now, if we take this space, and this space could be a moment before you go and cook your dinner, it can be just listening. Okay, what does my body need today? What does it? Okay, it needs that those green spinach and that green broccoli and whatever. That's what it needs. It doesn't need that alternative thing that isn't so good for me, but that's easier to make, or so on, right? It's taking space to listen, to tune in, to make wiser choices that will then support my emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Remember, they're just, they're all the same, which we've done a very good job of trying to separate them. So making wiser choices, and with that, the ability to say no. Like, no, yeah.
It's so important.
Again, and I think, many of us will say no, say yes when we mean no, and it doesn't do anyone any good. We do it, feeling kind of resentful. We probably don't do the best job we could do. We don't have the energy to do it. That's why we didn't want to say no in the first place. And so practicing no. Practicing no, just the little things like no, not right now, or no, not today. So for me, bringing in the menstrual cycle awareness has been huge for this, huge.
Yes.
Maybe I can speak a little
bit. Yeah, please talk about this, because this is really, I think, for the feminine experience, the experience as a woman, this is really something that has to be elevated in the conversation. So yes, please, Bex, yes.
So for years, I had really no idea about my menstrual cycle. I took it to mean the bleed time. That was. If any time, that would be the time I would take rest, but most of the time I would just power through regardless. Now, after going, much deeper into this work, and there's some incredible women out there who are really leading the way with this. Dinsmore-tuli is one.
Alexandra, book right back there.
And so, I'm just so grateful to them for like stepping up and stepping out and sharing their research with us. So it's realizing that, we have this, just like the seasons that we have here in Europe. We have the spring and the summer and the autumn and the winter, right? And just now we're coming into spring, and the energy is lifting us up into summer. And we can see this in our inner cycles, which will be, just our bleed time, moving up into that pre-ovulation and ovulation time. And that's when we have more power. We have the ability to say yes, and we want to say yes, right? It's the times that we make all the plans, that we're really sociable. Of course, there are exceptions. Every single woman's different, especially if you have spent years and years ignoring the cycle and saying yes the whole way around. But generally, there's that upward current that is the time that we can go out there and multitask and do 1,000 things. And yet equally important is the other half of the cycle, right? And so that's the downward, the contraction, the time of saying no. And that's the time, in the external world, that the leaves will start to fall from the trees, and the days will get shorter. It's the time of going inwards, and really taking rest. And I feel for many of us in this, globalized kind of Western society, everything is about doing all of the time, all of the year round. We no longer respect seasons.
Right.
We don't respect even the different times of the day. Right. We've got lights burning all night. We've got deadlines to be met, irrespective of the time of the year. We've got AC on in summer and we've got the heating on in winter. It's just like we've just merged all the seasons into one. I think the same thing with these inner seasons. It's like we reach our own inner autumn, the time that our energy levels are going down and everything's going back towards the womb, and we're still busy doing 24/7. Yes. I just want to add now, this isn't only obviously for women with a menstrual cycle. Right. This is irrespective of whether you have a monthly bleed or not. It's just the energetics of what's within a woman's body.
Yes.
And I feel getting to know my own cycle has given me so much more empowerment. It's allowed me to realize why I don't want to do things at certain times of the month, or right. That I just can't focus just pre-menstruum. Like, there's no yes. point sitting down to do a bunch of analytical research.
Yes.
Right? But if I go into my creative writing, like, wow, there's so much to write.
Right.
And so that has been an incredible insight for me. And same thing with my own healing journey, realizing that my so-called PTSD symptoms are much more extreme pre-menstruum, right? Whereas in a summer and in a spring, I can have a greater coping mechanism, a greater capacity to hold life. So I feel for every woman, charting their own inner seasons is really important. For women who have gone through or going through menopause, then tuning in with the outer seasons, and of course the moon, just the lunar yes. changes that go on, and full moon when we do tend to have more energy versus the dark moon. And this can just be wonderfully liberating. And so that's been a huge part of my self-care. It's this ritual and routine of every day writing what day I'm on and writing how I feel. Yes. And then, in a month's time, I'm writing what day I'm on, what I'm feeling, and being like, oh, look, last month I also felt like this. Right? It will pass.
100%. And I think, when I was growing up, my mom is a nurse, and in my family we talked very openly about anatomy and about our cycles, but it was very much from a this is how you manage it perspective, which I think is like, it was almost like a management thing. We've got to strategize this thing out, which I think is the approach that really society wants us to take. And I was actually sharing in my yoga class, I'm doing an exploration of refinding the feminine with my students currently. Yeah. And I was saying, we don't talk about this openly. And our society, I was using the example of, like the boxes of pads and tampons that we see in stores, they have butterflies and rainbows and they're pink, and it's like this sanitized, let's keep it on the surface, let's keep it really sanitary for consumption. But the depth of examination of emotion and sensation and energy and cycle and tuning it in, it's almost like it's a lost art that needs to be rekindled.
Yeah.
And, for so long, in high school, I was suffering from eating disorders, and I actually lost my bleed. And I actually remember being excited about that. Oh, I don't have to deal with that any longer. I don't have to think about that any longer. Mm-hmm. And as I've become older, I'm 40 now, I've really taken time over the past few years to do this charting and to do this deep dive, to notice those cycles and to notice those patterns. And Bex, you are 100% right on when you say that that's self-care, to notice these ebbs and flows and these rhythms and being able to watch your own waves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's such a journey of self.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, what it can reveal. It's these times that like, oh, this is the time that to go in and give myself all permission to do that. And you need to do it, you know, on multiple levels for our health of our physical body, so we don't get such perhaps extreme pain for some women during that bleed. So I have more energy as I'm coming back into spring and summer. I mentioned before that, you know, some of us who spent years ignoring our cycle and its rhythms, you know, you can't now tell the difference between spring and summer and autumn and winter because we're so, you know, burnt out, right? It's just been running on empty for years, and this kind of build up of stress that's in the body can be so extreme that it filters out into all other aspects and areas of our life. So it does, it's you know, it's so massive, I think, for our own health and also for the health of our relationships.
Yes.
I feel like what you're saying, like what we're talking about, and yet it's not just with women, it's with the men in our lives, it's with our partners, with our brothers, with our sons, with our fathers. It's you know, educating them as well. Like they want to know, they're like fascinated and curious about this, but it's been so taboo for so long, or that's women's business, or it's nothing to do with them. And yet it can be, you know, such a deep relief when you're saying, okay, I'm coming into my inner autumn now, I need space. And if you don't give it to me, right, I'm going to find ways to make you give it, you know, make you want to not be near me. And so I feel that's a really important, really exciting time as well, that we are like opening this up into a more public forum. In terms of it being really sanitized, our menstrual cycle, well, in fact, you know, the whole cycle has been forgotten. It's like we have this few days of the bleed, and that's what is known as the menstrual cycle. And that's the part that we many times have felt ashamed about, or, you know, I remember as a teenager, I would have my tampons and try and hide them so no one else would see, and still like carrying this kind of stigma around that, oh, you know, if you got a tampon I can borrow, yes. And carrying on as normal, like going to do a strong yoga practice, even though my body really wants to rest.
Yeah.
You know, some of us, you know, it never even occurred to us that perhaps we should, you know, take a day off work on the first day of our bleed, let alone have permission for that. But the more it's spoken about, then perhaps the more this will be accessible. Mm-hmm. You also, you know, spoke about these deeper layers, and I would say it's something that's actually deeply spiritual.
Oh, yes.
It's our own inner practice, and it's unique to every single woman. Mm-hmm. And I think, or I feel, that this is one of the reasons why talk of the menstrual cycle has been so silenced, because it is such a force field. It's such a tool of personal and collective empowerment. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm. And so it's something that has just been, we've just been really cut off from and detached from. And yet, like, it's in a form, you know, Dinsmore-Tuli speaks about this as our inner yoga. Right? Yes. We have inner yoga not just through each monthly bleed, but through our whole life as a woman, and the changes that our menstrual cycle gives us on a real deep level, like a transformation of consciousness. And so many of us are too busy, like I said, working every day of every week, that we don't realize that we're becoming deeply intuitive at different points of our cycle. Right? We're becoming deeply sensitive at different points of our cycle. That we have these different abilities, different creative arts that are showing up that are completely unique to me. And this is where it's so beautiful, because it's so tied into self-care.
Yes.
Our menstrual cycle can reveal to us what's out of balance in our practical external life. Like if we're getting really easily overwhelmed by our work, for example, and we're really detesting it, there's something there, right? There's something saying like, this is not what I meant to be doing. Right? That's self-care. Why am I getting up every day and doing a job that I don't want to do if I don't enjoy it? Self-care, having the courage to, say thank you so much, and what is it that I do want to do with my time? Or relationships, if we're getting angry in our relationships the same time every month, the same issue, like what is it there that's trying to tell us? And self-care, okay, this relationship is not for me, or these changes have to be made in this relationship for it to be honoring and respectful to me and my family and friends. So I feel the two, self-care and menstrual cycle awareness really go hand in hand.
Yes. And I love that you made that connection between the listening and inner wisdom to the permission to say yes or no, or to make change when it's necessary for you.
Yeah, exactly. And to trust it, right? We have to.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
These struggles are coming up, and they'll come up every month, They'll come up every month, and so we have to, it's like,
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's like this incredible feedback loop that's completely unique and personal to every individual woman. And yet we've had such abuse of our menstrual cycle, and many of us are put on the contraceptive pill when we were really, really young. We never had a time to like really tune into the wisdom and the magic of our own cycle. Or like we kept it really quiet and never spoke about it, or we saw it as something purely physical. Even on that physical level, it's the lifeblood, it's the holy blood, right?
Yes.
It's something that doesn't need to be or shouldn't be a health hazard and packaged and sealed and sent off in a special truck, right? This is the sacred blood to be returned to the earth, incredibly rich, fertile blood. And so again, just seeing our fear of that blood and fear of what it is to be fully woman, right? So yeah, real collective healing that's being done right now.
Yeah, this image is coming to mind of us as women and our seasons, and really Mother Earth right now being handled by us in all hazmat suits. That somehow our essence as women, this blood, this planet is toxic, is poison somehow, and we do have to package it and get rid of it as quickly as we possibly can. And what would happen if we as women and as men who are interested and wanting to go deeper into this, what if we took a moment to take off the hazmat suit? Maybe you start just with the gloves and you start tracking, maybe, and then maybe you take off the hood, and then maybe you can step out of the whole suit and start really stepping into this empowered space of inner knowing.
And what comes with that as well, it's a real appreciation of the innate wisdom, right? The wisdom that's right here. Like, these bodies are so intelligent. Your body, you are so intelligent. instead of thinking, oh, it's an inconvenience, or, you know, seeing our moon time as a painful time, or just getting in the way. And so, like, really connecting to this and realizing, as you know, the point that you're making here, like, what's going on out there is no different from what's coming on in here. And we've, you know, had this kind of false sense of separation for so long that's given us permission to abuse out there and to discard out there. And yet, ultimately, once we can, you know, embrace this and love this body, like, wow, this body is amazing, right? It's so amazing. It's so amazing for all the wisdom it has, for its ability to heal me. And the same thing with the earth, just giving her time to heal and to repair and to listen to her, that deep listening that is necessary if we need to know or want to know how we can take better care of those we love by taking better care of ourselves. So the two, again, you know, it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's so necessary. And this real, as well, appreciation and self-love can come from respecting and getting to know our cycles. One thing that struck me when I was, you know, pretty ill, was just the miracle of the body. Like, wow, you know, and watching my friends come and go from the hospital and being kind of, wow, if only they knew, like, how fortunate they were that they could just get up and walk around. You know, no matter their age, no matter how they thought of themselves, no matter, you know, especially not the size of their bodies, right? The stuff was like, oh my goodness, just to have a body, like, wow, you know, and the wisdom that's there. And again, like, so many of us have just been so bombarded by all these external images and ideas of what we should look like, that we've just completely forgotten what a living miracle we are. And that was one thing I really wanted to say, because it really came through so strong for me. It was just like, wow, my goodness, you're so fortunate that you've got a body that's healthy enough to get up and to take care of itself, you know, but also this remarkable admiration for my own body. That, you know, all that I needed to do was take rest, and my body would grow back my skin for me, right? Wow. and I still do. I just wake up in the morning and I just kiss the scars I can reach, and I'm just like, thank you so much just for working so hard for me. And the same thing with the earth, like, she takes care of us. And all I want to do, like, I just want to be outside. I just want to be breathing in the fresh air and, you know, walking in the, you know, amidst the trees and on this powerful land. It's like she's got us, you know, Mother Earth is right here for us all the time. It's just that we've just covered her in concrete and forgotten about her. And so there's just real appreciation of the living miracle that we are, you know, as life, right?
And I think that brings up can we allow Mother Earth to be there for us? Can we allow ourselves to be there for us?
Totally.
You know, can we fall back into trusting that wisdom without having to second guess ourselves? Can we trust Mother Earth without having to pave her over?
Yeah.
And
completely.
that, I know for some of us out there, that's a huge ask in this moment. But what might be one, you know, there's always a starting place for that trust to start, and it's a relationship building. You know, we have to build that relationship with ourselves just as we would build a relationship with someone else, and we have to rebuild the relationship with nature, remembering, by the way, that we are nature. You know, I always find it fascinating that we say I need to go out in nature, and it's like, you can also go in nature, because, oh yeah, remember,
completely.
This is nature. You are the seasons. You are the moon. You are literally star stuff. You are it.
totally. And that's actually, you know, that's a daily practice that I've been doing, you know, not just now. I mean, you know, for a few years, it's been a daily practice of just saying thank you to the earth for I'm part of her and she's part of me. And thank you to, you know, the fire and to the space for it's part of me and I'm part of it. Taking a big breath in and feeling that air within me and that water in my mouth. And just thanking the water and the air for I'm part of her and she's part of me. Right? And that alone, like it's then we can never be alone. Wherever we are, we're at home. Yeah, but actually, and that was another another aspect of self-care that I think has come up. It's like, where do I feel most at home? And I've never really felt at home anywhere.
Yeah, yes.
Always been traveling to the ends of the world. And you know, there's this example of, you know, if you have a glass of muddy water, really shook up, all mixed up, right? You need it to settle. And what do? You don't just put it down, you put it home. And it's curious how I've ended up back here in the UK after, you know, a good 15 years of being out of the UK.
Yes.
And just this, not saying that you have to go back to your birthplace, but just somewhere that you've got a relationship with the, for me, with the environment, you know, feeling safe here, feeling held here. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's actually, it's allowing all those fragments and all those particles just to settle, just to come back down, right? Maybe that was a bit of a tangent, but it felt
no, you know, I think last count I've moved over 30 times in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember now. Yeah.
This idea of home has been elusive and intriguing and scary and curious. And in all of my travels, it has been an environment that has invited me home. And if I can tune into the environment within that resonates, that's aligned, that's centered, that's grounded, that's in tune, that's listening, then I know home is here. At the same time, I can also connect that inner environment to what's around me. Yeah. And those fragments do start coming together no matter where I am now. But it's taken a long time to come to that space, to come to that knowing. And I think that that's part of self-care too, especially for those of us who, you know, home either hasn't been safe or it hasn't existed in the traditional context, or we're on that path of searching for what that means. It's, can we trust to start here?
Totally.
And examine the inner environment. Yeah,
what you just said there, searching, right? We're always searching.
Yes.
And I see it a lot in the yoga world. It's a search for some idealized future state.
Yeah.
Some state that I'm going to be all together. Or that I will always be centered. That I'll be happy even. Like, I don't feel that we were given a range of emotions just to stay happy all the time. You know, and it's almost like this acceptance or this ability to embrace a wider range of what it means to feel, to be deeply feeling.
Yes.
And also, you know, what I was getting at with that home, it was about taking rest.
Yes.
resting in one place.
Yes.
Just giving ourselves permission to be still wherever it is that we choose to do that, you know, and whether we're very busy in that rest, but, you know, ideally, many of us, or you know, so many of us really need to take deep rest that's longer than a 10 or a 14-day holiday. And if work won't allow us or allow you that time, then what changes can you make that you honor, you know, the full capacity which each of us have, which can't come when we're, you know, pushing on through year after year after year, until we're forced to listen, right? And that's how I began at the beginning, which is many of us, we only start self-care when we really like knock to the floor.
Yep.
Can we actually make these incremental changes and integrate them in our daily life from now?
Yeah. And on that note, I'd love for you to, Bex, you have some work that you've been manifesting over the last couple of years. And I want to invite you to talk a little bit about those experiences. I'll share the dates first, just so that people have them, but I'll also include the dates and links to Bec's site where you can register for them in the comments below. But you have, I just want to read them here, make sure I've got the dates and the titles correct. So we've got Living Wisdom, and that's taking place at the Yoga Barn in Bali, Indonesia. That's taking place the 14th through the 21st of May. And then we have Unwind the Feminine, also at the Yoga Barn. That's taking place the 28th of May through the 4th of June. And that's happening in Loch Ness, Scotland. The 14th through 19th of August. So 2 locations for Unwind the Feminine.
The Scotland one, those dates will be different.
Okay, so those dates will be different. Don't quote me on that, everyone. We'll get you the dates. So stay tuned to Bex's website for that. And then you're hosting a wilderness and yoga experience as well. And that's taking place the 18th through the 22nd of July in Yorkshire, UK. So do you want to talk a little bit about Living Wisdom, Unwind the Feminine, and then the wilderness and yoga experience?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. So I started the Living Wisdom program after what I mentioned before, this gap between what I saw in those of us who were practicing and teaching yoga, how we were teaching it, what we were teaching, and really what was going on inside, and how to bridge this gap. Many of us, we really care a lot, we're really passionate about doing something useful in our lives, and yet we feel really impotent about what to do or how to do it. So this course, both the courses are 8 days long, and Living Wisdom in particular will go more into the history of philosophy, but not your conventional history. I've been doing a lot of research, or following those who are doing a lot of new research on the history of yoga, and revealing how this discrepancy between, you know, what we have now in the modern yoga industry and, you know, what we could consider the ancient roots, you know, how this discrepancy between the two has emerged. And what, you know, what threads we can draw between the two that can make it really useful for us. Like not just that we're giving a spiel of the, you know, the 8 limbs of yoga and, oh, we need to be kind to each other and so on. Like, we know this, right? But really how this can show up in our lives in terms of working to minimize the damaging effects of our own addictions, for example. How we can embrace what I spoke about before, the enormity of the emotions of what it is to feel fully human. How do we handle things like intense trauma, or even just day-to-day challenges, and of course grief. How can we fully embrace love? So these are all topics that I'll explore through Living Wisdom, by going through and giving as much as I can in just 8 days an overview of some of the history and philosophy of yoga, and like I said, how that has evolved into something that can seem so different when we turn up to your average yoga studio. right? So it's something I feel really passionate about. I call it yoga activism, and that's because it not only means going out into the world and sharing our yoga in a really proactive and supportive way, and in a way that's inclusive of people, regardless of whether they fit into the contemporary yoga stereotype or not, but also how we can activate yoga. And by that, I mean just not that we're showing up on the mat every day and doing a practice, but having the same inner challenges year after year, or, you know, month after month. And so, yeah, that's something for practitioners and teachers that I've designed that I hope will be really, really useful and supportive on their individual journey. Unwind the Feminine really goes into some of the topics we've been speaking about, like this kind of what's missing, I think, for us as women in terms of embracing our own bodies and brilliance. Before it was called Unwind the Feminine, it was body image. And I felt that that put a lot of women off, because it was very difficult to say, yes, I feel pressure of conforming to a certain body image, and that can show up in, again, a myriad of ways. So Unwind the Feminine is broader than specific body image, but it also does bring in these contemporary pressures that many of us feel to conform. Right. So we'll look at what I call the missing gaps of teaching yoga to women. And this means recognizing that we have a woman's body that has different parts to it. It goes beyond even the gendered esoteric body that is from medieval Hatha yoga. We have our own inner yoga through our menstrual cycle and through our own cycles of life. And even how we teach and practice yoga in a way that allows us to reclaim our own wisdom and own innate ways of moving. So rather than following somebody else's directive of how we should move, right? I mean, saying, well, actually, how do I need to move? And that exactly goes into our self-care. So I feel, you know, both of those programs are very different, and yet they're so important for the times that we're living in. It's got really dark in here. Can you still see me? I didn't realize I'm plunging into darkness. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, the sun is setting here. So, and that leads on to that wilderness and Yorkshire retreat. And I did this last year. We practiced outside. We went on long walks. And the teachings were so beautiful because I didn't have to say that much, right? Because if you just go and immerse yourself in wild nature, so much becomes clear, so much. And so that's just a really special time to rejuvenate and to lean into the beauty of practicing outside. And like I said, taking these long walks with like-minded people. And you know, you can camp, you can stay in an eco pod. We'll have beautiful vegan meals outside under the summer sun. So yeah, I'd love to share that with as many people as possible. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh my goodness, thank you for creating these spaces, for going deeper, and thank you for your wisdom and your openness to sharing your lived experience of this work. You know, one thing I have to say, Bex, is that I've greatly admired just how much you are forever committed to the deeper excavation of this work. It's something that I really, it struck me when you and I first met in April of 2014 and how you are willing to take this practice to places personally that I think a lot of people aren't ready to, and your willingness to share that. And so thank you. Thank you for being the incredible human you are in this world at this time, doing your work and bringing it to others. It's such a gift, Bex.
Thank you, Heather. I think, you know, many of us, we don't have a choice, right? We find ourselves in the middle of something, and it's driving us. So I feel really fortunate for everyone who's supported me and continues to support me, yourself included. I feel like we're just in this together, exploring and living, you know. So thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Bex. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy we got to connect today. I've missed you. And everyone, again, I will include lots of information, lots of links so that you can get in touch with Bex and register for these incredible experiences. I'll also include a link to Uma's book, Yoni Shakti. It is an incredible, I don't even want to call it a book, I want to call it a journey that you can take and explore yourself. And Bex, if people want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, through my website, you can send me an email there. So that's freedomthroughmovement.org. Yeah. And also I'm happy to offer like a discount code for my immersions.
Okay.
So I'll share that with you, and you can pass it.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that. Bex, thank you again. You're a teacher, you're a friend, you're a sister, and I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.